So, this is Jerry Dillon, photographer extraordinaire.
Oh.
Amazing local photographer in our area, and you've done some amazing work. Just want to start off with asking, how'd you get into photography? Like, what's your story?
About 15 years ago, I was very passionate about cooking. Photography was nowhere in my mind at all. It would probably be the last thing I thought I would be doing. And so I went into culinary school. Very passionate about that. I graduated, I traveled. It was during one trip. It was about seven months long. It was on my bucket list, was to go to Alaska. And I got a camera before I left. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take pictures of all this wildlife. And I was so jazzed. And while I was on that cruise, I started learning, everything about my camera. Made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of successes. And I came back with just a plethora of amazing images. And kind of from there on out, I just kind of had a love for photography. But again, it was never anything that I thought would be, my livelihood. I tried my hand at illustration. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna illustrate a children's book and I'm gonna make it big. And I worked on it for about 2 years. And then I just started feeling convicted. I was like, what am I teaching children? Am I teaching them about Christ? Am I teaching them about the good things? Or am I teaching them to believe in things that aren't true? And I talked to my wife and I said, I'm feeling really convicted about this. And we prayed about it. I just decided I didn't feel right about it, so I walked away from it all. It's still sitting unfinished with, I could still finish it in a month and sell it most likely. And I just got on my knees and I said, Lord, I don't know what my purpose is in your eyes. And I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to do your will, and I didn't know what that meant. And I got up from praying and I sat at my desk and I turned my computer on and all of a sudden there was this YouTube video about a YouTube channel. Like how to have a YouTube channel and all. I'm like, I'm gonna do a YouTube channel. And so I bought a camera and I started taking pictures of wildlife. I started, getting back into it. Became very passionate about it. And I'm like, well, animals aren't gonna pay me anything. The likelihood of me becoming this National Geographic photographer is very slim. And so I started getting models. And I started taking pictures and I'm like, I think I got an eye for this. I think I'm pretty good. And it was more a general feedback from other people. And I'm like, And so I just started going on YouTube and learning how to edit. And I'm all self-taught in essence, aside from the YouTube thing. Other than that, it was all organic. I learned and failed on my own with my camera. That was probably the biggest thing, was learning my camera. Shooting the wildlife first without this sense of someone's paying me or I have a deadline. I was able to naturally develop that relationship with my camera to where everything became so effortless. Like if I saw a deer, I'm like, I know how to...
It's a part of your body, yeah.
The lights change. I know how to do that really fast, And that would be my biggest thing, was I learned my camera. There is a really cool story. And I was on my way out of town and I was driving by on my way to Quilisi and I drove by this swamp and I said that would be a cool setting for a really cool photo shoot. And in my mind I could see like this maiden in the swamp and I could see fog, and so I put a model call out and I said, hey, looking for a model, lady of the lake, blah, blah, and my phone did not stop going off. Hundreds of people wanted to do this shoot. And I found this amazing young girl by the name of Kendra. And she was just absolutely beautiful. And her mother was on board. And she was like, I'm gonna go on Amazon and buy these outfits. And as we were looking at the outfits, my mind started turning. And I'm like, well, this would be so cool, if we could implement maybe a frog and like a crown and then my mind just took off.
Yeah.
At that point I was like my own worst enemy. It was like I'm just setting myself up for failure. And so I'm like, where am I gonna get a frog? And so I talked to Patricia's Pet Shop down in Port Angeles and they agreed to loan me this frog. Okay. At first I had to buy it. and then I brought it back alive, then I could get my money back or whatever. And so they set me up, but I went on Amazon, I bought real golden little crowns, and it fit perfectly on its little head. And so we had our little mascot, and we did this shoot, and it was so mind-blowing, the stuff that came from that shoot, that it pretty much was the launching pad for Billy Blue.
I saw that picture. It's at the very, very beginning of your page. I was like,
Yes.
he had to have photoshopped. There's no way he did. That's an actual frog. I actually thought that was edited, and that's
real
crazy.
frog. Yeah, that's a real frog. Later on, not when I first started, but it comes with maturity in anything you do. You start to see a bigger, broader picture, and you start to gain wisdom, right? In your field of expertise. It doesn't matter what area in your life it is, you start to navigate differently with more open eyes. The more I worked, the more I learned to let stuff go. I would have these big plans. I would go, into Michael's, and I would go up and down every aisle, and I would find certain things, and my mind was just running 1,000 miles an hour. You think that you're creating this huge production, and wait till they see this. And when you get out there, you realize that the way things are taking shape, and the way maybe the model's posing, or the way the lighting is, and all your plans just crumble. But the more I grew and the more I learned, the more you just realized that it was more beautiful to let it unravel organically. You kind of cheapen the moment. You get out there and it's so much more beautiful, and the story's told so much more beautifully and eloquently when you don't have all the extra stuff.
A lot of people, when they first get into photography, think, I need a flash, I need all these shades, I need a diffuser, I need all this equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, while it's nice and while you can really use it to manipulate the scene, do you really need that to get the magic?
So that's a really tough question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do it the best I can. Because there's a nuance to that question and the end of the answer. It depends on the photographer. And it depends on your knowledge of light. You see a lot of natural light photographers at weddings that will take pictures of the people, and they're beautiful, but all the background's blown out, right? And so it's very hard to adjust for ambient light and a subject at the same time. It's almost impossible. And so you're always in a battle with yourself of trading one versus the other. And so early on, I'm like, well, I don't want my photography to look like that. I want to create these beautiful, vivid storybook images where it literally looks like a painting, right? Where you can see everything, and you just get lost in this image, like a Monet, you know what I mean, or a Picasso or something. It would suck if you were looking at a Picasso and all you could see was the sun and everything else was just dim.
Yeah.
You don't see all the brilliant colors, right, and the vibrant colors, and everything plays its own piece in the orchestra, as it were. Good that I was at where I was at in regards to my walk in photography, because I made so many mistakes along the way trying to learn that new architecture. It's very scary when you're sitting there with a person and your flash isn't going off and you don't understand how to work it, and you're like, the first time I tried to use it, I had to roll everything up and tell the model I was sorry. And I look back at that, and it's so humbling, that now when I'm doing it, I'm like, okay, oh, that's not right, perfect,
Yeah,
and so
how far you've come. Yeah.
it's such a journey. So now with being able to use off-camera flash, it's almost like having a studio. Wherever I go, you expose for the ambient. If I were to take a picture, you wouldn't even be visible. Like if I'm outside and it's a beautiful bright sky, and I want to make sure I see the blues, I want to make sure I see the clouds, I want that whole image to scream with color. I have to measure or adjust for the ambient lighting, everything else but you. And if I were to snap the picture, you wouldn't be able to see hardly any of your features, if at all. You would just be like a shadow, kind of.
Yeah.
So what you do is you use an off-camera flash to fill in the subject. And once I learned that, the doors blew off my business. It opened so many windows artistically.
Really the next level of...
It was next level. To answer your question as far as do you need it? I would say yes. If you really want to be able to create that, you absolutely need.
If you want to go next level,
you need the equipment.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about was that you really bring this, and like you can see this with like all of your photos, is that you really bring this light into it that like I don't really see anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being fully honest, like I've never seen it and it looks amazing. How does your faith inspire that? Like showing God's light through that. And I know that's
a great
a
question.
thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I struggle with too. How do I shine God's light? How am I the salt of the earth by taking this photo?
That's a great question. And so when I started, when we first started thinking about let's make this a business, my wife and I sat down and we said, well, this is for God. We want to glorify Him in it. We don't want to do a bunch of dark photography. I saw a lot of photographers, in boudoir, and I saw just evil photography of blood, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, to me, I look at that and I cringe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to take any or I don't want to take anything away from their ability to create.
No, yeah, I
not
understand.
beauty, but because I don't think it's beautiful, but their skill. I'm not taking anything away from
You
people.
can't take away that their skill of photography,
No.
but just because you take a picture of something, it's a really good picture, doesn't mean it's good.
Right, and it doesn't mean it
Yeah.
glorifies God.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I sat down and said, okay, I love the story of Jonah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and then it was funny because I was listening to In the Belly of the Whale, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Belly of the Whale. And she's like, I love it. And I said,
It's amazing.
it's it, Belly of the Whale photography. I wanted every picture that I took, I wanted anybody to be able to share it with anybody. I wanted a little kid. I didn't want like parents to be looking at my stuff and be like, oh, don't look at this. I want those kids to look at that and be like, that is so beautiful. I wanted to be able to share my work with my own children. I wanted to be like, sit on my lap, son. Like, look at this. Let me tell you a story. Did you know? And I always wanted it to be something that I could do, that I would never be embarrassed of, that I could always look and say, I never did anything to taint the name of a Christian. There's been some times where it's like pretty borderline, and it's in those moments, it's like, okay, step back.
And
Okay,
check.
let's redirect this.
Let's see this.
Yeah, because
Look at it
you
from
get
a
in the moment,
different
you're like,
angle.
these are amazing photos. Well, try this, and it's like, don't try that. It's stupid. Just let it be what it is, and it's going to be beautiful. And to be honest with you, this business was never mine. It's always been his. He can take it away from me because he sure as heck gave it to me.
Yeah.
And again, that's like, in the big move coming up, where we're going to go work for the ministry. I'm not saying I'm never going to take another picture, right? I'm not saying that I'm putting my camera down or selling it on eBay and I'm walking away from it. I would never do that.
It's God's time.
It's God's time.
That's what God wants.
And I'm giving it to Him.
Mhm.
He gave me this, right? I was
That's
able
amazing.
to fulfill what I wanted, was to provide for my family. And I think He's used this as an instrument to put me on a path even more now clearly to serve Him. And I know it's not over, you know what I mean? But yeah, as far as like the light in the pictures, you're not the only one that's ever said that. I get it all the time. Your images have so much light in them. And I have people say that the only reason that I hired you because you're a Christian. And I see light in your images, and I said, praise the Lord.
We could talk all day, but thank you for doing this. This was amazing. You really got some awesome. You really talked about some awesome things. I'm really excited.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to leave everybody with some advice. And that is, no matter how hard something seems, all things are possible through Christ. Right? Seek first the kingdom of God, and He will add everything else unto you. Don't give up on yourself. Right? If it doesn't align with the will of God, if it doesn't align with the words in the Bible, don't do it. Because God won't bless anything that is contrary to His will. Right? But aside from that being the most important, the next most important is don't give up on yourself. Work hard. It will get easier. No matter how many times you fall, get back up if it's something you want to do, pray about it, and you're only going to get as much out of it as you put in. And that's probably the greatest advice I can give to anybody. But always seek God first. So if you have that mindset, then I'm gonna do everything within your will, He will bestow everything else unto me. And that has been true in my life, and I would say that would be true because He's good. He's not the author of confusion, and He's righteous and loving and merciful. And
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Yeah.
meeting with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.